All right, hello there. My name is Dr. Josh Franco, Assistant Professor of Political Science, and welcome to Civil Grand Jury Lab Workshop number 2. I'm glad you're taking the time to either join or listen in. I appreciate it. Let's jump right in. So about the lab itself. So the Civil Grand Jury Lab is a workshop series that's hosted by me and focuses on California's 58 county civil grand juries. We'll virtually journey to counties throughout California, learn how to navigate their county civil grand jury websites, and review a recent civil grand jury reports. And we meet on Thursdays from 6:30 to 7 p.m. on Zoom during the fall 2022 term. Recall the vision, and the mission of the lab from last section, so I won't reread this. This is our lab advisory committee, so thumbs up to our team. And just note that in my mind and in my heart, community college students are researchers. And so this is part of the reason why we have a civil grand jury lab, is because want to introduce community college students in particular to the opportunities that come with being able to research, in this case, a longtime institution of California at the local level. So with that, let's go ahead and jump to workshop 2. And this workshop will be focusing on Merced County Civil Grand Jury. Now, Merced has a very special place in my heart for a number of reasons. One, this is where I transferred to UC Merced in 2005. It's where I met my now wife, Myra. And then we went to part Sacramento. We were in DC working for the Lieutenant Governor, then Congressman John Garamendi. And then back in 2012, we returned to Merced so I can start the PhD program in political science at the university. We bought our first home and our first son was there. So a great deal of attachment and love for Merced County. Obviously, we live now in San Diego County, so my love is growing for this area. But a piece of my heart has been and always will be in Merced and in the San Joaquin Valley. So I'm happy to have this workshop focused on a county I'm very familiar with, and we'll be able to explore their civil grand jury. So let's jump right in. So our learning objectives with this workshop are the following. First is to identify the Merced County Civil Grand Jury website. And then secondly is to describe how civil grand jury reports are structured. So first, a little bit about Merced County. This is located in the northern San Joaquin section of the Central Valley of California. There's about 281,000 people who live here. For some context, there's about 3.3 million people who live in San Diego County. So obviously there's a number of millions more here in San Diego compared to Merced. This is a part of a broader metropolitan statistical area, which includes Modesto, and just a beautiful county. So I encourage you to check out the county's wiki page, which I'll pull up here, so you can learn a little bit more about the demographics, the background, the history of the county itself. So next we have the grand jury of Merced County. So the civil grand jury is a judicial body that's composed of 19 citizens. It's impaneled to act as the arm of the court, as authorized by the state constitution, to be a voice of the people and a conscience for the community. 42 states have some form of a grand jury, and California is still one of the states that allows prosecution to be initiated by either a criminal grand jury indictment or a judicial preliminary hearing. California impanels county civil grand juries every year to conduct civil investigations of county and city governments and to hear evidence to make recommendations or to decide whether to return indictments. In Merced County, if an indictment needs to be made, a separate criminal grand jury is impaneled. So I just want to make it clear that when people hear grand jury, they typically will ask, what is that? But for those who have that base knowledge, they'll typically think about it as a criminal grand jury, which is conducting a criminal investigation on some matter at the local, state, or the federal level. Civil grand juries are focused, at least here in California, on civil matters, and in particular, how counties and city governments and special districts and school districts are doing their work or not doing their work, among other things. So we can learn a little bit more by visiting the Merced County Civil Grand Jury webpage, which is here. And on their website, you see a couple of things. So about the grand jury, contact them, file a complaint, which is the public's way of communicating with this grand jury, and any county grand jury has a similar mechanism of filing a complaint. There are forms, grand jury members, a history of the grand jury as a whole, and probably in this county as well, how it works, the reports, who can serve, and who would make a good grand juror. So there's a lot of background information that we can check out, and in particular about this grand jury, obviously an overview and the evolution of it. I do want to point out this file a complaint just kind of as a reference, and we'll check it out in more detail in a future county, but just know that this is a way that people, residents, citizens of a county can share a concern about local government's activity to it directly. In other words, say you're living in Merced and you have a concern about one of the cities or the county or one of the special districts or the school district, obviously you can go directly to the elected officials of those bodies and share your concern with them in public spaces and forums. But you can also file a complaint with the grand jury, and it goes into their pool of complaints that they review, and then they'll consider whether or not to investigate it based off that information that's provided. So just note that it's there, and we'll take a look at it for another county in a future workshop. So the reports of the Merced County Civil Grand Jury. Ah, yes, the lovely reports. The reports are the culmination of the work of the years-long work of a civil grand jury itself. So let's go ahead and take a look at the reports page for the Merced County Civil Grand Jury. And here we'll see a couple things. So they'll have their grand jury reports, it looks like by every fiscal year. And this is a fiscal year from July 1st to June 30th of the following year. So grand juries operate in that cycle. They don't operate on a calendar year, which is from January to December. They operate from July to the following June. So here's their different grand jury reports. And then they also have some links to agency responses for some years. So it looks like they have some for 2013. And they have grand jury reports going all the way back to 1999, 2000. So a healthy repository of reports. What we'll do is we'll check out the 2018, 2019 reports, because then we can also, if we have time, pull up the grand jury response. But let me go ahead and pull up the 2018, 2019 report and see what we find. So here first we find that it is a PDF, and we'll go ahead and download the file. And obviously has a couple security warnings, which happens from time to time. And let's go ahead and bring that report here into our screen. So report looks to be a single PDF, 57 pages long. And this is the cover sheet. It looks like a 3D rendering of some kind of facility. So we'll probably learn more about that in a moment. Let's take a look. So a couple of acknowledgments. This grand jury always wants to express an interest to engage with and learn about the activities of a local government or one of its sub-entities. So let's see here. Titled Merced County Behavioral Health and Recovery Service Center. So in the 2018-2019 Civil Grand Jury expressed an interest to meet the director and staff at the new Merced County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services facility located on 301 East Street. The jury met with the director and members of the team on February of 2019. They heard presentations, learned about the new facility and all this background, and giving an overview. So that's pretty cool. So they're probably acknowledging them for hosting them for a meeting. Wonderful. So here's a map of the county that they've included. And this looks to be a political map. So it includes the major cities in or townships in Merced County, with Merced being the county seat or the capital of the county. And then you have Los Banos and Atwater, which are major cities in the county. And then you have these smaller communities all the way from Gustine and Volta to Snelling and Merced Falls and Planada. So this is their table of contents. So we're going to start to see the structure of the report itself. So they have their cover acknowledgement. They have a map. They have their table of contents, and then a letter to the presiding judge, which we'll take a look at in a moment, a list of the jury members, any mandated inspections of jail facilities, which are under the purview of the county grand jury. So in this case, the John Lataraca Correctional Facility. And then in this case, it looks like they've done a report on police departments within Merced County and for these cities. And then they've done investigative reports of these three topics, which are the Board of Supervisors compensation, public roads funding report, and then the use of Merced City Council chambers. And then they have a continuity report, which details things about clients and continuity, election procedures to prevent fraud. So these are probably follow-ups from a prior year's report, just to see where things are to date, a year later or so after the report was issued. So we're going to start with this letter to the presiding judge. This is something that's common across all civil grand jury reports, at least the ones that I've looked at, where the grand jury itself will submit a letter to the presiding judge saying, this is who we are, this is the work that we've done, here's the information that we've garnered or collected, in this case from citizen complaints. And then the work the reports that were done, the investigations that were done, and their kind of summary of overall efforts. So that's the letter to the presiding judge. Here's a list of the civil grand jury members. So in this case, there's 21. It looks like a couple of them were unable to complete their term, so they would step off, and then an alternate would take place, or they would just keep going. And then the residents, the cities from which these jury members presided. Now, before I get into this next part of the report, part of the reason why I chose Merced County, minus my heart and familiarity with the region, was this was the place where I first heard about civil grand juries. So I was at a meeting, and there's this old timer talking with another fellow, and he said, "Oh, I'm going to be on the grand jury this year. I'm looking forward to it." And I was kind of just like, I was in the background, and I already said hello to them, so I was kind of doing my thing in the office. And in my head, I'm like, what's a grand jury? And so this is like where I learned about it. It was like downtown Merced at an event, and someone just mentioned it in their service, and I kind of like, I put a little ear up, I listened to it, and then I just kind of put it back down. The antenna went down. I said, okay, one day I'm going to learn more about them. And now here we are, 10 years later, 8 years later, having these workshops. So really appreciated learning about it then and there. So in the first part of the work, they had their mandated inspections of jail facilities. So they'll have an introduction explaining why and how they do their work. They'll provide a summary, background, their methodology, a discussion, and then they'll start with their findings. And the findings are what they have found out from their methodology and from their discussion. So in this case, they have 5 findings related to the correctional facility, which is that first, finding 1, that it is in an advanced state of decay. Finding 2, that the county has received a $40 million grant in 2015 for phase 1 upgrading, and the county has allocated $5 million to upgrade the facility. Finding 3, that no funds had been released to begin the project based on unfulfilled conditions of approval, and so on. And then after the findings, there are recommendations, and they're labeled from R1 in this case to R3. So there's 3 specific recommendations that they're giving to the correctional facility. And in this case, the first one is the maintenance staff be increased to maintain facility and address issues in a timely manner. That the county put the highest priority on completing the grant requirements needed for the release of the funding so construction on phase 1 can begin, and that the Board of Supervisors, which are elected officials, identify funding sources for the implementation of phase 2. And then here's the request for responses. So the state law requires that any local government who is given a finding or recommendation, that they have to respond to it within 90 days or within 60 days, as delineated by the report itself. So this is the general structure of a report. So in this case, the Merced County has a packaged report or set of reports that they put in one single PDF, and then they'll list out their specific reports within this broader or kind of compilation document that they put together. So next I want to pull up this, we'll go to and kind of skip past this topic. So there's a section on each of the police departments and the cities or municipalities in the county. And let's go to this topic. So the Merced County Board of Supervisors compensation, and I'll go ahead and read the summary. So in 2007, the Merced County Board of Supervisors initiated ordinance number 1825, which changed the computation of their annual salaries. Instead of determining salary levels by conducting multi-county job title comparison surveys and voting on their own salary packages and increases, Ordinance 82 or 1825 specifies that board salary will be a percentage of the Superior Court judges' salaries, and that all future increases will be based solely on the cost of living adjustments provided to judges of the state of California outside of the supervisor's controls. They provide some background information on that ordinance. They talk about their methodology. In this case, they conducted interviews. They gathered information off a public website. And then here's their discussion based off their methodology. So those interviews and the data they collected. And then now here are their findings. In this case, they have 7 findings, which is pretty robust, and they have 4 recommendations, which is also pretty robust. And in this case, they expect the Merced County Board of Supervisors to respond to the findings, at least findings 4 and 5, and then recommendations 1 through 4. So this is the general structure of reports that you'll see in this county, and you'll also see them in almost all the other counties of California. This is largely due to efforts by the statewide California Grand Jurors Association, which is a statewide nonprofit that's been around for several decades now, where they provide training and guidance to new grand jurors and new grand juries that are constituted every year. And one of the things they've worked on is communicating clearly not only what the state law says with respect to how grand juries should be constituted and operate, and then the reports they should produce, but also providing the technical guidance and how that should look and be prepared. In other words, the statewide nonprofit has worked diligently and dutifully in engaging with those 58 county grand juries year after year after year after year to build a culture where the information that's expected by law is communicated out in a thoughtful, meaningful, and obviously structured way. So that's what we're experiencing is over time, the hard work of putting this all together so that it's readily readable and available to the public, whether they're residents living in Merced County or in North County or in Butte County or in San Diego County or Imperial County, among the many others. So the one last thing I'd like to do is pull up take a look at one of their other reports just to highlight kind of the range of issues. So the next topic, or the third topic they had, was use of Merced City Council chambers. So I'll read the top line here. So the city hall has spaces available for rent to the public. These include conference rooms, a hall, another room, and chambers. And the grand jury received a complaint that questioned whether an elected official had been given special privileges in violation of city policies regulating the use of city hall facilities. After investigating, the grand jury concluded that the use of council chambers by a local nonprofit group on a Saturday did not violate city policies, and no special privileges were given. However, the grand jury did find that city staff were not following official city policies regulating the use of city hall facilities, and that those policies are poorly managed, not well communicated, and outdated. The grand jury recommends the city update its policies regulating the use of its own facilities and ensure employees are well versed and on the revised policies. So background, methodology, discussion. And in this case, they'll have their findings and they have their recommendations, and they expected a prompt report, not only from the city council, but also the city manager, who is the CEO of the city bureaucracy that exists. So all this is to say that civil grand jury reports are a vital part of the public's way of overseeing the actions of local government. And here we just got a hint of it by taking a single look at taking a look at one county, Merced, and 1 year's worth of reports in the 2018-2019 cycle. What we'll do in future workshops is we'll dig a little deeper into how local governments respond to these reports. So either we'll use this as a running example, or we'll go to another county, and we'll start to continue to unpack I'll say the chain of events that happens when these reports come out, how they're responded to, and then maybe how the local media or the regional media or the statewide media pick up on it to bring the issue that has been investigated by these grand juries to light, to a broader audience and to the greater public. So with that, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen in and to learn more about obviously Merced County and its grand jury system, but also to see how this will be a model for us as we're looking at other counties and their grand juries. So with that, thanks so much for taking the time to listen in. Have a great evening.